Legal and illegal migrants in the U.S. tell your thrash stories about life in America. This is for Chan. No one will know who you are. I rented a bunk bed in a hostel in Queens. $300 a month, cheap by local standards, but it felt like living inside a horror movie. Literally, one roommate watched horror films every night with the volume cranked up, never used headphones. Rats ran freely on the floor like pets, sometimes even checked out the shared kitchen where nobody ever cleaned the pans. The room smelled like sweat, instant noodles, and some weird spray we used to mask everything else. That's where I learned to tune out the noise, sleep with one eye open, and stop being picky. You either snap or survive in places like that. I chose to survive. That was my start. Tell your thrash stories about life in America. My first month, I lived in a closet. Not a metaphor, an actual closet, 5 by 5 feet, in an apartment shared with 9 other people. $500 a month. The landlord called it a cozy micro studio. I had a mattress, a shoe rack, and one power outlet. Shower down the hall, shared kitchen with a scheduled queue. One night, I woke up to weird scratching. A mouse was trying to drag noodles out of my pot. From that day, I hung my food in plastic bags on a nail. It was humiliating, insane, and very American. But I knew it was temporary. We agreed on $10,000. I'd be the fake husband. She was a citizen. We took staged photos, had fake dinners, even posted cuddly pics on Instagram, textbook stuff. I started falling for her. She was beautiful, confident, even flirted a bit. Then boom, a new guy, introductions, hugs in front of me. I was just a tool. 2 weeks later, she disappeared. Took the money. Immigration called me in for a second interview. Now I'm broke, under suspicion for fraud, and my dreams hanging by a thread. I still have that fake wedding photo. I was smiling in it, I still believed. We worked construction together. I covered for him, shared meals, even helped him find a room. Then he screwed up, left tools on the roof. I told the foreman. 3 days later, ICE showed up at my door. Cold cell. Questions. Silence. After 2 nights, they let me go. Turns out he ratted me out for $300 to avoid getting fired. That's when I learned, same language doesn't mean loyalty. Same country doesn't mean family. And friendship isn't always mutual. I crossed the border in 3 days. Night, sand, snakes, 1 water bottle for 2 people. Slept under thorny bushes. Drank dirty water from an old canister the coyote brought from Mexico. On the 2nd day, my fingers swelled up. Nails started peeling off. Skin cracked. 1 guy collapsed, we left him behind. When I saw the lights of Texas, I didn't cry. I just dropped to my knees and passed out. Some of my nails never grew back. I'm undocumented. So every time I go out to throw the trash away, my heart pounds like crazy. Cops often patrol the building, especially on weekends. I sneak out at 2 to 3 a.m., hoodie on, no talking, fast steps. I once saw a neighbor get taken by ICE while delivering pizza. Since then, full paranoia. In America, even garbage can cost you everything. I was just sitting outside a store waiting for a friend. It was raining, I had on an old hoodie and wet sneakers. A man walked up, handed me $5 and walked away. I didn't even have time to say, I'm not. It felt awkward, but also warm. I bought a coffee. At that moment, it was the best thing that had happened to me all week. I was a doctor. Back home. Here, I clean floors at the same hospital. My name isn't listed as a physician, just as part of the janitorial staff. One day I heard a patient scream, no one else around. I ran in. He was bleeding badly. I helped as best I could. A nurse walked in 2 minutes later and said, "Who the hell are you?" I just walked out. That was my only medical case in 2 years. She seemed normal. We made a deal. I live there, help out, get my green card. After a month, she yelled at me for taking long showers. Then for looking at a cashier. She started threatening to report me, said she'd tell immigration it was all fake. I became a hostage. I ran away after a year. Slept on friends' couches, then in a basement. But at least I could breathe again. First month in America, we had only rice and a bottle of ketchup. My wife cried. I pretended it was fine. Now we have a pan, a mattress, a lamp, even meat sometimes. But I'll never forget the taste of that rice. Tasted like fear and hope. We used to shower at McDonald's. 3 of us. 1 stood guard, 1 washed, 1 dried under the hand dryer. Then we'd order the cheapest Coke and sit for 2 hours. That was our shower. Our home. Now I rent a $1,800 studio. But sometimes I think, maybe we were happier back then? 3 weeks on a construction site. Son, concrete bruises? They promised $1,500. Paid $300. Said, if you don't like it, complain. I left without a word. This is America. Not for everyone, but definitely for people like me. I came to the USA with the hope of a better future, got a job in a warehouse. Everything was going fine until I noticed that my boss and several employees were involved in dark matters, trafficking in illegal goods. When I refused to get involved, they started threatening me with deportation. The police offered me a deal, become an informant and help expose the case, or I could go to a deportation center. I had no choice. I agreed, but over time I realized that I had become part of a dirty game. I was being used as a pawn, and now I couldn't go home even if I wanted to. You look for a job, you get into strange companies, you start working with guys who actually do questionable things. When I came to the US, I didn't know I was going to get mixed up with people like that. I found myself in the middle of a gang shootout. No one warned me, no one told me that in this business you could be targeted just for working with them. There were bullets, there was chaos, and I stood in the corner thinking of only one thing: how not to get caught in the hot hand. It happened so fast I didn't even realize I was in the middle of it. No choice, if you stay, you're in. If you leave, you lose everything. My story looks like some kind of action movie. Believe it or not, after I arrived in the USA, I was offered a job around the house, cleaning, helping with repairs. Everything looked honest until I realized that I was being used. My boss turned out to be not just a man with money, but a man who was deceiving everyone around him. He hired migrants to work for pennies without paying them and just threw them out when the work was done. When I wanted to leave, he simply told me that I had no license and that I couldn't leave his house without a fine. I sat in his apartment and did whatever he said to keep me out of trouble. It was a hellish situation because I didn't know what to do. I realized that if I didn't do something quickly, I could be in serious trouble. A few days later, I decided to take a chance and run away. At the very last moment, when they were distracted, I jumped out the back door and drove to another neighborhood. To avoid falling into their hands, I had to change my name and go into hiding. Finding a job was difficult, but I learned to be more careful. All I knew was that there was no turning back and that I should never trust strangers again, even if they promised easy money. I came to the United States from Mexico, hoping for a better life. As everyone knows, the USA is a multinational, tolerant, and open country, right? Well, as soon as I started working, it turned out that things were not so rosy. My first experience was in a construction company where I had to work side by side with Americans. They knew I was a migrant and immediately started treating me as something second-rate. I worked harder than anyone else, but they got more because they had American passports and could demand conditions I could not even dream of. Once, when I asked for a promotion, they told me bluntly, "You're just here to work, don't make it up." My teammates started calling me a sinner and illegal, even though I was doing a better job than they were. I wanted to leave, but they told me that without credentials they just wouldn't take me to another state. So I stayed under their oppression. At work, I was not allowed to rest, and every time I tried to express my displeasure, I was simply ignored. When I tried to complain, I was threatened with deportation. It was hell. I was nothing just because I wasn't American. I kept thinking about how to avoid getting into an even more dangerous situation and when I could get out.
Hey, like and subscribe to follow our new videos.